What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. This is the segment on my channel where I go back through A24's entire catalog from the first film they produced all the way until whenever I get current. And I am very, very excited about today's episode. This is a movie I have wanted to talk about on this channel for a while, and if you want to bucket it in to one of my new series that I've started, you could also consider this a Nate's favorite episode, because this is one of my favorite horror movies ever made. And I'm really looking forward to discussing this with you today. And the film I'm going to be talking about with you is Hereditary. Hereditary is directed by Ari Aster. When Ellen, the matriarch of the Graham family, passes away, her daughter's family begins to unravel cryptic and increasingly terrifying secrets about their ancestry. So I've been very excited to talk about this movie on my channel. I've never really discussed it before other than mentioning it in passing in different videos. And I will say this without hyperbole, but this is one of the greatest horror films ever made. I think this is a modern masterpiece. I think it's so special. It exists in a way that it sets itself apart from so many other films. I know I talked about it earlier on in this series. I discussed Robert Eggers' The Witch, but every now and again there are just movies that come along that just feel so unique and distinct in their vision, in their execution, and the performances that they get from their actors and what the film is trying to convey. And similarly to The Witch, which is a movie that every time I watch it really just kind of gets under my skin and makes me feel ill and does such a great job at executing everything that a horror movie is supposed to be. Hereditary, it falls into that exact same distinction, and I'm really excited to discuss this movie with you today. So at the beginning of this film, we are introduced to the Graham family, and the mother and father are Annie and Steve. Annie played by Toni Collette, and Steve played by Gabriel Byrne, and they live with their two children, Peter played by Alex Wolff, and Charlie played by Millie Shapiro, and they live in this house seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Annie designs miniature houses, and we get this absolutely beautiful shot at the beginning of the film inside of her studio where the camera slowly zooms to one of her miniatures, and it actually turns into the room where her son is waking up. It's legitimately one of the most beautiful shots you could ever use to open your film. And we learn early on Ellen, the grandmother in the family, has passed away recently, and so very early in the film we go to Ellen's funeral, and we see Annie give this speech about her mother where clearly her mother was not a great person, and she's trying to conduct herself, but you can tell there's a lot of intense emotional damage surrounding what Annie's mother had done to her over the years, with emotional abuse and just the way that she's kind of taken charge of the family, and she's incredibly distraught by it, and the family's kind of broken apart, but they're trying to stay together as this tight-knit group. And as the film progresses, we learn that something supernatural is occurring surrounding this family, and particularly Ellen, the grandmother. And something is happening between Ellen and the youngest daughter, Charlie. And Ellen, when Charlie was born, took a very intense interest in her, spent a lot of time with her, as far as to the film implying that the grandmother wanted to breastfeed her. And so there's some strange connection there, and the entirety of the film is us examining this familial trauma with these supernatural undertones. So as I said, I think this movie is a masterpiece, and for starters, I have to talk about the performances. I will never forgive the Academy for not nominating Toni Collette for this film. This is the greatest performance of her career, and I don't really think it's even close. She is amazing. There are so many sequences that you can pull out of this movie and just grab a 10-minute segment and analyze her performance, and she is giving it 1000%. The monologue she delivers at the dinner table when she's talking to Peter is just phenomenal. One of my favorite sequences from her in a movie. Just some of her reactionary shots throughout the film of her being horrified, and just the way her face looks and the way that her body reacts to situations. She's so believable, and it's just incredible to see an actress give this caliber of a performance, especially where it goes on-the-nose in the third act. She has to do a lot, and there's a lot asked of her in the third act of this film, and I think that she nails every single bit of it. And it's just really impressive to watch. I also think Alex Wolff does a phenomenal job in this movie. And it was interesting when this movie was released because there was people that really enjoyed his performance and there was people that were very hypercritical of his performance. But like the cries and the sobs that he lets out in this movie, they're so guttural and realistic feeling. Like it feels like someone just having such an intense bodily reaction to a situation that it's like ugly, disgusting crying in a way that feels very real. It doesn't feel like scripted acting. There's so many movies when people cry or have a harsh reaction that it feels like they're being performative, but there's nothing about him in this movie that feels performative. It all feels very realistic. I love Millie Shapiro's performance as Charlie in this. She gives very creepy vibes off, but also she's just a kid. So it creates a very interesting dynamic because there's nothing necessarily sinister about her other than like the noises that she lets out. There's one scene in particular early on with a bird, but like your mind is constantly pushing back and forth between what is going on with her. Is there something evil at hand? Is she just a normal kid that's being invaded by whatever the supernatural presence is? And I love the push and pull that you get as a viewer. I also love Ann Dowd's character as Joan. I think she's a phenomenal actress. I love her in The Handmaid's Tale, but she's been in the industry for a long time, and I always get excited when she shows up in specific roles. But this movie in particular, she is phenomenal, and there's also a lot asked of her in this movie, and the way her character shifts throughout the runtime. It's just really amazing to experience, and I think that they all create this dynamic that makes this world feel very real. It doesn't feel like you're watching a movie. The cinematography is remarkable. The patience that Ari Aster and his cinematographer have in this movie, it's just incredible. And rewatching it several times since the initial release, there are so many little hints that are given to you as an audience member throughout the movie as to the directions that they're going to go. As simple as a character smiling in the background of a sequence. It's incredible the patience that Ari Aster had to slowly reveal information to you as the movie goes along. And so much of that is due to the masterful camera work, especially that opening shot I was discussing. And when you see the outdoor treehouse at the beginning of the film and what that's going to allude to later on in the movie. This movie is horrifying, but it's not a jump scare fest. So much of this movie is about what the camera is making you look at. There's a scene in particular where Peter's character is sitting in his bed and there's something in the corner of his room. And if you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, it is horrifying and it will send chills up your spine because you sit there and you question what is going to happen next. And I think that's what makes Ari Aster such an incredible director, is he is able to make you feel so many truly visceral, guttural emotions that you are reactive to in a moment. And this movie will make you feel something from the first frame until the credits roll. And that's what impresses me so much. The sound design in this is eerie and unsettling. I love the score as well. It's very haunting, and I think that there's tracks that fit like the more somber, quiet moments, and then there are tracks that fit the more horrific moments so perfectly. Ari Aster always seems to know how to pick the perfect composer to work on his films, and this movie, it's just remarkable all around. And what I love so much about it is the people that complain about this movie always say, oh, it's not a horror movie, even though it 100% is a horror movie. But I think what makes this movie so incredibly terrifying is the fact that the first 45 minutes of this is a family drama. It's devastating. The twist that happens at the middle point in this movie, when I saw it in the theater the first time, there is no way that anyone on the planet would have ever known that this movie was going to go in the direction that it does. And I think using grief as an allegory for horror is something that everyone can relate to. This is a family who has gone through a lot, and as the film goes on, they go through even more. And it's like they're pulling each other apart because each person is grieving differently, and each person is involved in the situations differently, to where you can understand perspectives from each and every person, which is what makes it so much more hard-hitting. There were moments in this movie that had me tearing up that I totally forgot about. Just like Toni Collette's reaction to one of the twist moments in the middle. Not only is her performance is incredible, but just her being a mother and being a daughter and the reaction that she is having in this situation. It's so palpable and realistic, and you can really just get in her shoes in a way that not a lot of movies can just put you in each one of these characters' specific circumstances, and you feel it so realistically. And I love the way the supernatural elements are conveyed to you, because there is some exposition in the very end of the movie explaining it, but throughout the movie most of it is just alluded to, and so you're not getting ham-fisted expositional dialogue. And what makes it so terrifying is the mystery of all of it and why it's occurring. And you're asking yourself the question, why is this happening to this family? Why are they going through this situation? And I think what Ari Aster ultimately is showcasing with this movie is that sometimes things just happen to people and life hits hard, and there is literally nothing that you can do about it. And you have to just try to react and move on and live in the best way that you possibly can. And sometimes things just get worse, and that is the way that life works. Not everything is peachy keen, and not everything can always be silver linings ahead. Life can be brutal and unrelenting sometimes, and I think this movie showcases that in a way that sticks with me. Every time I rewatch this movie, I think about it for weeks afterwards. It's one I always am itching to revisit, despite the dark subject matter of the film. And if you have never watched this movie before, I implore you, please watch this film. It is one of the greatest movies of all time, and hands down, one of the greatest films in all of A24's catalog. So have you seen Hereditary? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I think this movie is perfect. I legitimately don't have a single complaint about it. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.